Good morning. Oh, Graham, good evening. So I'm hoping my internet is going to be working today. Yesterday was super fun day where the internet was out and they were like, oh, it's going to be just a little while, although I was nervous because the very first thing they did was send the compensation terms, which is never a good sign. Never a good sign. It was terrible terms, but it wasn't a confidence boost.
Wait, you get compensation if your internet is cut?
After 3 days. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
wow. 3 days.
3 days.
Man.
They should introduce that concept here as well.
So,
Here
yeah.
it's just like you get a notice that your internet is going to be down for some maintenance work. That's it. There's nothing.
We don't normally get anything at all, actually. This one was like the first time ever we've been contacted to say your internet's down. That probably means it wasn't the ISP's fault. And they were like, it's fine. Someone broke it.
So
Which
here,
is-
because we have ISP that are, most of them are also a mobile provider. Usually you get a SIM card connected to your home connection. So in case of extended downtime, they give you unlimited data on the SIM, but I have no signal in my place, so I just can't use it.
Right. Yeah, that was my second problem, was our windows just don't allow mobile signal through them. So you don't get any mobile signal inside. So everyone was just outside for the whole day. Anyway, hopefully today will be better.
I just take 2 ISPs. So
Yeah, that's the better way to do it. Yeah. Backup. Cool. So on the agenda, I've made a slight change because what I know is tricky to see is actually who's out across the 2 teams. So not everyone has great visibility. So I'm going to just see if it makes it easier to just have a section at the top of the agenda rather than us having them on specific meeting dates so that we can see. Feel free to play around with that or give feedback depending on how that works. Cool. I know this is the short one, so I don't want to spend ages on this, but I did just want to give you a quick overview. The release manager workload metrics are nearly done. I'm just finishing up documentation, and then that epic will close out. Let me just give you a super quick walkthrough of what you can find on there. The biggest problem with these metrics is they're hard to find because they're in a spreadsheet. So I'll have a think about that. For now, I'll just link the spreadsheet in from the top of our Slack channel. So at least there's a jumping in page, but I will figure out what we can do to make this more easily discoverable. So dashboard pulls in the sort of the averages that we have so far. Haven't really figured out what will be the right amount of data to use for an average, like whether we want to look at it quarterly or all the data we have or whatever the time frame is. For now, it's just everything. And then you get individual sheets to show you what's going on the individuals. So deployments are week by week tracking, and that is to keep it in line with the deployment blockers data, so we can make use of that. This is basically trying to figure out how much of our week did we spend having to do stuff to deployments, which is surprisingly high, given that we have an almost fully automated process. You all know that, like, it's because of the incidents, but people outside of delivery definitely don't know that.
I was going to say, does this include incidents? If it does, then yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's pulling in 2 bits of data. We've got the failed jobs from the new dashboards that system have got. So when the data starts tracked for those, they come in. And then we have got the number of deployment failures is from deployment blockers. And then the total time spent on deployment failures is the number from deployment blockers, plus adding on the admin that I know you all end up having to do every time we have incidents and things like that. So it's a bit of an assumed number on top to give us. So most of our effort is on deployment blockers, right? And then I've tried to do something similar. I won't spend too long. To post-deployment migration, something largely similar. That one is a little bit more straightforward. That one's looking a little bit more at the deployments, the incidents, because the actual normal case is fine, but once we're blocked, we're so blocked. So that one's a little bit different. And then we have the releases. So monthly release. This one, there's not an enormous amount of data on this one, just because I think it's kind of, we're in a monthly prep period or we're not. And when we're in it, it's like everything you're doing is related to that. So the main bit of information I've tried to capture here is just what is that end-to-end prep time for a monthly release. Security release is largely the same, but I've broken this one down a bit more, which I may live to regret because this is the hardest one to keep up to date. But at the same time, particularly from orchestration, we will be using this data for our Q2 OKRs to try and make some workload reductions. So at least for now, it's definitely useful for us to be able to kind of easily see that, for example, we spend quite a lot of hours on the first steps, which is just pure admin. But then the merging time steps are the really time-consuming bits normally. And I think that's not surprising based on what we've seen with patch releases. And then finally, we have patch releases. So again, very, very similar. This one has a little note on G, which is when we move to the new patch release process. So you can see there are some improvements to time, which is expected, but it's still a reasonable number of hours to get through a patch release for various reasons, which is why we didn't go ahead and extend the maintenance policy. So this will hopefully give us a place where we can decide on what is the most time-consuming stuff, like which process do we need to go after, like which aspect of which process do we need to go after, and also hopefully starts to answer the questions of how long does it take to do X? So like how long does it take to do a patch release, or how long does it take to merge in security fixes or publish things? Hopefully this will give us at least a bit of an idea of what data we can use for that. Are there any? Yeah, go ahead. I was going to say any questions.
Sorry, for the patch release, the ones that the last few ones, 15.10.3, 15.8.6, could it be that these took longer because they were for the Git security release? Because that's always more complicated.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So did I include it? I didn't have it in that one. On the security release one, yes, I've tried to indicate whether there were special cases, because that definitely affects things. So I've left some notes on there if we see something like particularly interesting for this one. For example, we had 2 of the fixes were reverted, which just generate a heap of extra work for us. So yes, patch releases, we might want to consider doing something similar. Because yeah, some of those definitely spike up the work.
So when we talk about patch releases, these are not security releases, are just purely patch releases.
Correct.
So when what Ruben said about 15.8.6, which has an outlier number of time spent in preparation, is that because it was the Git upgrade, which was a public security vulnerability, and so it was not handled as a security fix but as a general, even though it was actually a security release. Is that the case?
Was that what this one was? I thought this was
I don't remember the actual release versions.
I think that one is separate. I think this was just a genuinely tricky patch release.
No, I'm not talking about this one. I'm talking about 15.8.6 on the patch releases. 15.8.6 has 4 hours of preparation time, which is unexpectedly long compared to the other one, or after the process change, right? Because we used to have a long preparation, and then preparation should be short, right? And so I was trying to understand why.
Yes,
that one took...
I think that this one actually was. I don't think there was anything special. I think this was just a indication of how our process can stretch out. Now, I don't think there was a particular problem for this one. Because I didn't note anything on this. So I think it was a straightforward one. I'm going to guess it was just a case that we started the patch and then we weren't in a rush to finish it, so that we steadily went over the prep, and then we moved through the final steps.
Again, what's the meaning then of active time spent? Because I'm thinking like we started the process, we had problems to complete the preparation, so someone spent half a day.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of would be the ideal. From the data we have, it's capturing here is the end-to-end amount of time we spent with this. Like, it's in someone's mind, because oh, I still need to do those first steps. It might be that this gets delayed by other things like deployments, or we were doing other releases. But I think it's still useful, even though it might not be someone sat there on a keyboard for 4 hours end-to-end typing. But it's a good indication of, if that was fully automated, you wouldn't have to think about it for 4 hours. So sure. I think look at it more like that one. I actually don't think that patch release was a difficult one, looking at the other numbers. I think it was just we started slowly.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Counting QA failures has always been a problem for us. So I think Myra had started in her shift, she had started creating a release tasks issue for every QA flaky failure. But that is like a lot of admin work. So I wonder if we can have like one release tasks issue, say, per week. And every time we have a flaky QA failure, we add like half an hour to it, something like that.
You certainly can do that for sure. Like, do you mean on deployments or on releases?
Oh, I meant on deployments.
Yeah. So what I was going to say for that one is, I'm hoping this number of failed jobs might be able to supersede that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, shouldn't we be able to pull that from pipeline metrics, surely?
Yeah, that's right. Like, I think we should probably, I think that maybe is the next iteration, perhaps, for some of these metrics, is now that we have we have all the dashboards and all these extra metrics, what can we actually take away from our manual processes and replace with those? I'm hoping that we actually now do have a lot of this automated. It looks like we probably do. We just maybe need to find out how to use that.
We actually have a metric that counts the time spent retrying jobs. But the problem with it uses the webhook feature of the product. And from what I've seen the last couple of months, it's not very reliable. So like if a webhook fails, it just disables the webhooks until someone manually sees, oh, okay, it's disabled, let me re-enable it. So it's like there's no automated way to re-enable it. There's no good notification system when it gets disabled. So yeah, so I don't know how reliable the metrics we get from that are going to be.
Interesting.
It sounds like something we need to probably improve in the product, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, unfortunately. Like, I think that's a great one. Let's get an issue and explain what we need, and then I think Sam can give us a hand on directing that with the right stage group.
Sure, I'll open an issue and list out the problems.
Nice.
I want to point out that even though I'm not the biggest fan of the admin work related to creating those issues for tracking failures or things like that, they kind of give a sense of ownership of the problem. So, because you don't want to create an incident if it's not an incident, but you want to make sure that there is someone assigned to solving that problem. And having that issue kinds of helps. So if we can find some sort of middle ground where the thing can be generated by itself, we don't have to do the admin work of writing or describing what is failing, but still having an issue or somewhere that can be assigned and say, okay, this QA engineer is looking at this, or distribution is looking at this, and kinds of give you a lightweight incident. That's the thing, right? Because this is what it is a lightweight incident tracker.
Yeah, agreed. And having that data is super helpful. I know it is a ton of work to capture and track. Having the deployment blocker data that we have so far has kind of allowed these metrics to come into existence. Then these metrics plus all of the delivery metrics that we have now, I think, puts us in a really good place to be able to produce a sort of monthly overview of how did releases and deployments go and what were the biggest problems and who do we need to help us. So I've opened another epic. I didn't want to bundle it into this release manager workload one because it's taken me long enough, but I've opened set up another epic that, when someone gets some capacity, we can try and actually move forwards so that we can be putting more of this information in front of people. Awesome. I will share this stuff in Slack as well. Feel free to have a poke through and ask questions about things that don't make sense or that we should be adding or improving, so we can start using those. Cool. B, there is a proposal up that will move the release date from off the 22nd and onto the 3rd Thursday of the month. Wanted to see if anyone had any thoughts. So Ruben, do you want to verbalize that?
I just put some examples of what the dates would look like. So this month in May, it would be 18th. In June, it would be 15th, and July, it would be 20th. Some benefits I can think of is one that, for example, it will give us a fixed number of preparation days for every single release. So like you won't have to, like some releases won't be suddenly on a Monday, suddenly on a Saturday. So that's good.
Agree. I think that's the main benefit is we won't have random weekend releases, which are difficult. But I hope we'll need to adjust our processes and things a bit, but I'm hoping it will become a bit more predictable and we would be able to say, because everything would adjust around this. So stage groups would work off a different milestone. And this, if we go with the Thursday, which looks like we probably will, say like they would have until the previous week to wrap up the milestone. And then we could, for example, just say whatever the last deployment on the Friday is our candidate, or we can figure out our process and then just work around a predictable number of days. So hopefully it makes things a little bit more straightforward. And then we could also set release manager handovers to be around that as well. Like, so it could be like the 3rd Friday of every month is the handover date or something like that.
Yeah. While we're
Go ahead, please.
I was going to very quick point. While we're kind of revisiting all this, can we also look at including time in a lot of these messages, notifications, tooling, talks? Because people, like, for example, there's like release candidate has been tagged and people are, or in like on the 15th, the release candidate is tagged, but I in my time zone always are like, it's the 15th now, but like, things often happen in the Europe or America's time zone. So APAC, we were like, what am I trying to say? Is just, can we make sure that maybe we put a time with any message we have that has dates? That's what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like.
Yeah, with the UTC coding or something. Because you could be like, oh, well, it's the 14th or it's the 16th. So how do I think about this? Is that?
And I think it's just naturally we've always had, release work done in Europe or in America, so it's kind of not been an issue, but I think it's kind of starting to be a tiny bit of a bigger issue where people get confused if they've made the cutoff or not, because we just
don't have strict time on any of those. The only time we have is the release. So release has to start preparation on a given UTC time because he has to be ready by the blog post publishing, which has fixed time. Everything else, we are in control, so we can do what we want, but everything else is more about number of days before the release. So we don't have a fixed time at all, right? We just decide maybe it's the EMEA release manager that is doing it. Maybe there are incidents and we wait for them, and so it's the Americas. So I don't know, right? So what are you asking here? Because it seems to be related to the cutoff date. So did I made it?
Yeah, I think it's more about the cutoff dates and stuff.
I
think it's probably not internally. Yeah, probably not internally to us so much. Like when we do tasks, but like, I guess when we communicate out, I think people get
I
sometimes
think
confused.
what we can do here is that because it used to be 2 working days before, if I don't remember, 2 working days before the release now, and the working days is the tricky part. I think confusions comes from working days, because then you don't know when this will happen. So if we move to 3rd Wednesday of the week, then we can say first Wednesday of the week is release candidate, and we can say UTC morning, something like this, right?
Sure,
So
yeah, exactly.
UTC morning to afternoon or something like this. I think will
That's
give
fine.
more
Yeah.
predictability, right?
Yeah, sure.
I think the other thing that might be worth adding in there as well is a lot of our stuff does move around based on incidents and other things. So actually, I think what we should also be making sure people understand, trying to help like communicate, is things haven't happened until they've been announced. So, you know, I think people make kind of assumptions like, oh, this is going to happen on the 15th, but I'm not sure what time. If you haven't heard the message, it hasn't happened. And rather than sort of tying people to dates, I think we should try and tie them to events or announcements and make sure they're looking at the right channels.
Sure. And I think that's the key too, is they can, because the messages are in Slack, like when we post them, they can like mouse over the time or whatever, and it converts it to the local time. But maybe we should make that clearer as well, as that the message itself kind of indicates this, as of this message, this has now happened, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's maybe it.
One problem. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead. Mine is just tangentially related to what we are discussing. So go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the time, so the 20-second is fixed in code inside release tools. So there will be need for upgrading that thing. So checking where we are relying on the date and making sure it is adapted to the new workflow.
Mm-hmm. Cool, makes sense. Yeah, I think there'll be a heap of like stuff that has to change. Cool. Sorry, Ruben, go ahead.
No. So in system, we've been discussing having like a dashboard where people outside delivery can have a look at, say, auto deploy related information or release related information. I wonder if we can have a sort of announcements dashboard where, so currently we announce things in Slack, but the problem is, that goes. So you get newer messages and that announcement is gone. Like many people miss it. So if everyone could go to one dashboard where they know all announcements related to releases are going to be, that would be much better. If that is possible, that would be really good, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something worth pushing at Victor aggressively for the environment stuff, or is it totally different? Okay.
100% no. Like we can talk about that, but no. I think this is actually the stuff that will be a really interesting beginning of PaaS for us, because I think this is the probably easiest small bit around surfacing up information about our stuff and what we're doing. I think announcements is a great first sort of obvious piece, in that that's information that people already want, but it's not the only information. I think stuff like the diffs on deployments is one. I think there's lots of information that we currently surface up in Slack that would be great to have just on our landing page. So I think for now we should make this look like what we need it to do, like in a dashboard or somewhere like that, and then figure out next steps.
Cool.
By the way, I don't remember if I mentioned it, but I was talking about Grafana dashboards.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's a great first step. And then kind of probably a little bit further down, we can work out where we, like, is there a way we can actually put more data together and make this a bit more interactive, or like, what does that look like? Maybe I should say, when I say a little later, actually thinking about our roadmap quite a while later based on capacity, not like in the next couple of months, but also, it's not a million miles away. Cool. Great. So I'll keep you posted. Like, you can follow on the MR on that. I'll let you know if any other stuff comes about. Tricky thing will be the transition. So we need to figure out what goes on when we do change this. Great. Should we jump to release management stuff?
Sure. Okay, so it's been a long time since I've done this. I think we start with package graph. Okay, so last week we had a ton of blockers, not as much as the Black Week a few weeks ago. I think this one has about 90 hours, 92 hours, while this one had 113 hours. So slightly better, but pretty bad. This issue was 14259, which was the I don't know how to describe it. A Gitly related issue that we figured out was not caught in staging Canary and was only caught in staging. So we kind of, even though the revert MR was merged and deployed, we thought that the issue was still there. So the deployment didn't proceed, and it could have been stopped much earlier, but yeah. I'll just address this. So this is nothing, no major concern. It's just that because of a bug in the pipeline code, it generated a lot of pipelines that couldn't go forward. Okay, so because of the large number of blockers, the deployment frequency dropped. So earlier it was at like 8, then 7. This time it's at 5. And with lower deployment frequency, we have a higher lead time. So 19 hours. Oh, sorry, 3.6 days. Slightly higher than earlier. 3 days.
I really wish
3.2
that
days.
graph was more visually obvious. It's just me that thinks that. Like, I think when you look at all the other graphs, it's so obvious that we were blocked for so long. And yet when I look at that one, I mean, I know it's weekends, but it doesn't stand out, does it?
We do have the lead time. How do I? Okay, something has changed. It's MR lead time dashboard. Okay.
Just try hitting enter and searching for it, maybe see if it.
Oh,
I think you can
Sometimes the-
hit delivery on the breadcrumb instead of here, and it should give you all the, so yeah, there.
okay.
It should give you all the folder, because I think we upgraded Grafana.
Yeah, it changed quite a lot. Deployment health, I think. No, it doesn't look like. I'll just try one more. If this one is not. Okay, I think it is this one. Why is it not showing data? 7 days.
Is the version in the drop down make sense?
Yeah, I think this is the latest one. Today's. But that's the problem. It shows only for one particular version.
Yeah, it'd be
Other.
like these work. Oh, there we go. It works super well when you drill down. It's like having the mean one sitting on top would be a really nice addition.
Yeah. Yeah, we can add a mean here for like the past week or the past month. That would be really good.
That would be really good.
Are you looking at the release management tool where there is a section with all the last packages and total time?
Release management toil dashboard.
I don't know what you're looking at, but because you mentioned this is only by version, so the release management tool has a section where it kind of goes over the past packages. I don't know if
I was talking about this, the merge request statistics, merge request lead time to production. I think that's it, right? So these are all this is the blockers for this week. 14259 was the massive one that took the whole weekend. Yeah.
Awesome.
Any questions?
Nope, I don't think so. Awesome. Is there any other stuff we should go over on this recording?